What's up, CUT Collective? It's Rev Sheree here with another Sunday Sermon Rewind. The Rewind is the official podcast for Christ Universal Temple, where we take a look back on Sunday lessons, we look back on events, and we talk about them, we unpack them, we discover the deeper meanings within these amazing lessons. And so what we're going to do today is a literal Sunday Sermon Rewind. In the hot seat today is Reverend Gaylon McDowell, and we are in a series called Mind Plus Grind. And his title is You Are More Than Enough. He's working with chapter 6 out of the text Mind Plus Grind, a thinker's practical guide to spirituality, written by, I was about to say Reverend Gavin Jackson. One of these days soon, he just proclaimed, Gavin Jackson, Esquire, who wrote this powerful text that talks about spirituality in the world of business and in the world of just honestly in living, because sometimes we take our spirituality and we kind of reserve it for sacred occasions, for going to church, for when we're dealing with churchy things. But your spirituality is to guide you and direct you and to prosper you and to in all the ways that you go. So we're going to dive into that today. You Are More Than Enough is the title of the lesson and the chapter that we're focused on. While I am, before I pull Reverend Gaylon into the hot seat, I do want to invite you to do me a big old solid and go ahead and share wherever you're watching this. If you're watching it on Facebook, if you're watching it on YouTube, please go ahead and share this with the people who are in your social circle so that they can be in tune with what you're getting, right? Sometimes it's good to kind of have something to bounce off of people so that you can grow together. We grow together really well in community. So while you're doing that, while you're telling the world that, hey, the Rewind is off and running, this is episode 16 of our series. We're in season 2. Very proud of the work that we've been doing here, supporting you. And I want you to know that this is an extension of the CUT Collective, our worldwide online ministry. And what we are committed to doing is ensuring that you feel the hug and the love and cared for and nurtured as just like the people who walk through the doors. So that's what my job is, right? I'm still stepping up to the job. I'm still getting better and better and gooder. But I am here to support you in your spiritual growth. And so the Rewind is a reflection of that. Like, this is the ministers coming together to make sure that you understand what you want to understand. So you're welcome to ask questions here, right? You can add your questions to the show, to the comments of wherever you're watching. Wait a minute, my lower thirds are going crazy. So you can add your questions to the lower thirds, and we'll make sure that we bring the questions in, right? So just, I said into the lower thirds, put them into your comment box, your chat box, in whichever platform you are engaged in. So, okay, without further ado, let me bring on Rev.
Hey there.
How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good. It's good to see you. It's good to be with you today.
Absolutely. Ditto.
Mm-hmm. You got on your grown-up suit today. That's we're a little formal, right?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's what ministers have to do. We have to show up certain places looking like, quote unquote, people say, you look like a minister. I'm like, I don't know what that exactly means, but we show up.
Just random questions. So did you always dress casual in the office, or did you all used to dress in your suits every day?
Before the pandemic, we were pretty much, especially me, I was suit and tie every day. During Reverend Coleman's era, it was mandatory.
Interesting.
Yeah, so no, it was men and women. We had a stricter dress code. I will say that. It's we give a little bit more leeway now, but people can't show up looking ridiculous.
Right. Well, listen, that's every employer in the world right now has to contend with the dress code and with in-office hours and all that. But anyway, just piqued my curiosity because I see you all over the place. Like, I see sometimes you are suited up and then sometimes you are more relaxed. So either way, I see maximum handsomeness. Okay.
Thank you. Well, right? That's the goal.
That's the goal. Right? I love it. So listen, we're going to dive into this lesson. I'm really impressed by the series for this summer, this summer series of Mind Plus Grind, because I think that we are practical Christianity. That's just the way that we teach, and that's our belief system. And I think that whenever you can simplify it and give it, like, let's look at what's the simplest way we can say this. I know that as a minister, You want it to stand. You want people to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like this text is a great jump off for true practical Christianity. So let me see what we're doing today. All right. So I have a few clips, but before we even get into the sermon, I think that one of the challenges that I won't even say it's a challenge, it's an opportunity for ministers, I think, is that everybody is focused on the news, right? Everybody is focused on what's going on in our world, and in some ways very troubled by it and vexed by it. And so I really appreciated you taking a moment, because as a New Thought Christian, it's easy to get swept up in the way everybody else is addressing the wars and the you call it warmongering, all of that's going on in our country specifically, and then around the world as a result. And so I appreciated you calling forth peace in the midst of what was going on. And here's the part. Right. So first tell me, like, what compelled you? What made you say, you know what, I gotta do this first?
Well, it's funny. So working on my sermon Saturday night, I had a seminar I taught on Saturday with Reverend Albert Aware, and I was doing all my prep work for that, and of course work and life busyness. So I said, I'll write my sermon on Saturday when I come home. Mm-hmm. So I wrote my sermon. At the time, I didn't know, our country was bombing another country while I was writing a sermon. So when I finished, I was like, let me just turn on TV, and like every channel had someone from the news commenting on the situation. And I was like, okay, well, let me just detach for a moment, because I need to just focus on what I just wrote and make sure that I can present it tomorrow morning. So I normally meet with the AV team every Sunday at 10, either on the phone. I mean, I could be anywhere, in my car, in the building, in my office. But before I ended up talking to them, I ended up talking to Yubi, our AV manager, before that meeting, I believe, for something. I don't remember what it was. And he said something, I don't know, did he say something during the meeting or before? Anyway, I have so many conversations before service. Don't even get me started on that. And he mentioned about peace in the world. And it dawned on me, he's like, you know what? I need to be responsible as a spiritual leader and say something about the unrest that our country goes through when we engage in military combat, for whatever the reason, whoever's the president, whoever's the whatever. And so I was like, okay, how can I tackle this? So now I'm, before service, I have my sermon, and I'm like, okay, but I got to say something. Now my brain is going scripture. Then it was like, oh, you wrote something in your daily inspiration, because, I wrote the month of June for, the DI.
Right now.
So I wrote, so that's why I pulled up the thing on peace. I don't know what, I see your peace. And I believe I read that during the sermon. So along with the scriptures, and I was also trying to get a point across. And the point was this: if we want to shift the world, and we're the people who talk about consciousness, we're the people that talk about that consciousness demonstrates its form. In other words, what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're believing, what we're proclaiming, we are the people who say that can show up individually and collectively. So how do I establish a consciousness of peace for our nation and for our world? I start with creating a consciousness of peace in me, because either I am enhancing the consciousness of peace, or I'm taking away from it by how I think, how I feel, what I believe, my state of being, my level of awareness, my state of consciousness. So what I was trying to do was shift it, and also remind people that even though stuff happens in the world and there will always be something, that does not have to determine if you individually have peace.
Right.
It's totally different things. And then, of course, I talked a little bit about the warmongers, but I had more to say, but I was like, I got to teach this sermon.
I know. I was like, it is, but I think that it was appropriate to give people directly something to work with, because even the sermon could be applied to what's going on in the world. Like there's, it's not like there's a separate truth, but I do think that to stop and recognize that, listen, ministers are people too. Like we're watching the same news you're watching, dealing with the same things you're dealing with. And it's all the perspective that you're dealing with it from. So I thought this, anytime I see love infused in anything, that pretty much gets my attention because I love love. That's my quality of God.
I know.
Reverend Emma Lester Lassiter talked about a focus for your life. Said you could focus your whole life on a principle or on an idea of God. Like that could be your whole thing. And so I think that's where the love was birthed. I think that was
the same for, it's the same for her. That was what she focused on. That in Genesis chapter 1.
Genesis chapter 1, yes. Let me tell you. I have some stuff recorded from her. I got to dig that up because that's just priceless. Her teaching. I think it's a renegade recording too of one of her lessons.
Reminding me, I got to go see her. Yeah.
Yes.
Next time you're in town, let me know. Remind me.
Yeah, that would be awesome to see her and touch on her and love on her. We're talking about Reverend Emma Luster Lassiter, who was a staff minister at CUT, the director of the Johnny Coleman Institute, and she also was the spiritual leader of Emmaus Center, which is a New Thought church in the Chicago area, and just an amazing teacher. All right, so in the spirit of love, I'm going to play this first clip.
In the first gospel, the first epistle of John is stated. Why do you say that?
Why they want me to be great? Here we go. I'm coming back to this.
Love God, who you can't.
Won't let me be great. Here we go again.
And not love your brother and sister who you can see. Don't tell me you believe in a God of love, but you can't love the person in the other country. We have a hard time loving the person across the street. Sometimes we have a hard time loving the person that's laid their head on the pillow next to us. If we're going to be the transformative agents in the world, we have to be the agents of love and peace.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that I couldn't let that one slip by because, I think that's also like you could just pass the plate like after that. Like that's truly what it is, because I know that the question comes up of what can I do? Miko said, thank you for talking about the current events at the beginning of the sermon. Like she needed that. And it's because a lot of people want to know, what can I do?
Mm-hmm.
And I like the first thing that you can do is check yourself. Right? Because immediately we take sides when we hear of it could be our nature to take sides, right? So I want to come on the side of what's right or what's wrong. And what I got out of what you said was, come on, check yourself and where are you in love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is truly what transforms. And I think that is, to me, then you can know what to do. But when you first start off divided, it's going to dictate your results. So I love that you, one, talked about my favorite principle, but also, gave us something to do first. What can you do first?
Right. That's part of it. So yet again, center yourself first in truth. Then look at how you can be an agent of change with your action and your vibration. All right. Because if you have peace and people around you have chaotic energy, you can be the space that allows them to calm down. But if you're interacting into that mob mentality of worry, fear, and anxiety, you're not only harming yourself, you're literally harming your mental health and your physical health, because that worry, that stress, etc., it will show up somewhere in the body. It will show up in your life, world, and affairs. It can show up in your relationships. It shows up because if it's going on in your mind, it's going to show up in your life. So I'm just trying to help people. First of all, get yourself together. Then you can help create the world we want to see based upon love, based upon peace. Because the people who start these wars and these military conquests and a whole bunch of things, it's always something to talk about in the world because it's always happening. We have to remember that these are individuals who, before they can declare war out there, war is already on the inside. So we're saying that if love is on the inside as a dominant way of being, then love can be a way of being on the outside in their actions and in their governance.
And I think that it's also in our and our actions, right? So the, Miko, I know what I got out of it, right? What I got out of that right there. I always toy with what's mine to do when I hear stuff like that. I know it's to hold the space for peace, but it's like, is there anything like what else? Like what else is there for me to do? And I think that when you begin with that and with the desire of, I want to be an agent of change, I want to be an agent of transformation, that question, that intention will begin to guide and direct you. So I appreciated that. Because that is really what the mind and grind is too. It's putting the two together. The mindset of a spiritual being with the action of what we do in this life, in our life, world, and affairs. So, so yeah, that was, I thought, I mean, like I said, it may have been that wasn't part of the original plan, but I think that it was definitely a divine plan. It worked together really well.
Once I shifted, God gave me too much. Well, now I got to get to this sermon now, God, so gave me the sermon too.
I remember when I first started preaching that I would be on one side or the other, where it was like I had 6 sermons in one, or it was like, oh God, this is like a 5-minute lesson, like one or the other. And it takes time to get there. It takes time to get there. So you said that just in the space of moving from this, what's going on in the world at large, to now looking at what's going on in our inner world. This idea about what challenges you. I'm going to play it. I'll play it and then I'll talk some more about it. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way because this thing didn't want me to be great.
Sometimes the calling is in alignment with your occupation. Sometimes it's not. Why should that stop your calling? So when you're where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's power. However, you should always know why you are wherever you are, doing what you're doing. Have you ever looked up and you were in a situation like, why am I here with these people? See, that's a real powerful introspective question.
Okay. So that wasn't the clip I planned to play, but that was perfect. So the this question I have, this is my question. Listen, y'all know y'all can add your questions into the chat. You started talking about purpose, right? Because there's tying into the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000. And I always think about, like, I'm always impressed when I find someone who is giving me a perspective I hadn't thought about at these stories. And so this perspective that was interesting and that spoke to me was about Jesus being on purpose, and that in your purpose, there is power. And when I hear the word purpose, I know that, the work I've done with clients, that purpose ends up being a really, really hot word. And it starts to make people feel anxious, honestly, when you start talking about what's your purpose. So talk to me a little bit about, you said that your calling, sometimes your calling is in alignment with your occupation and sometimes it's not. Tell me a little bit more about purpose and calling as you explained it.
Well, I believe in divine purpose and calling from the standpoint of, for whatever reason, there's something that from the soul that draws you into action to be and do something. And we can call that purpose, we can call that mission, we can call it a calling. It goes by different terms.
Right.
But there's a space of knowing this is who I'm supposed to be. And this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, what ends up happening often is people wait until they feel as though they have their life in a way to try to figure out their calling by getting their occupation, their money, their responsibilities together, etc. And reason why I put that part in the sermon is, one, the majority of people that work as religious professionals, clergy, the majority of them are bivocational. Just because, I've had the blessing of being a person who's worked at church for the last 24 years. That is not the case for most people. And I don't want people to think that because they have a calling to do something. I'm not just talking about a minister or clergy. I'm talking about whatever you think that thing is. I'm saying you can be who you choose to be, and you can take the actions that you need to take, even while you're doing other things. Even if your occupation is something else, that does not mean that your mission or your calling has to stop. You know, I think about the fact that, you know, Jesus was a carpenter by trade, and then he was like, when it was time to put that down, then he did what he needed to do. The Apostle Paul, I believe, was a tent maker. He did that, and then et cetera, you know, and you know, David was a military person, and before that he played music, and before that he was a shepherd. It was occupations that went along with it. So when David was called to be the king, he was a shepherd boy. Well, but what we do is because all the ducks aren't lined up, we think that we can't fulfill our calling or our purpose or our mission. And I'm saying, no, there's power in being where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing with who you're supposed to be doing it with. I believe there's power, there's alignment with when you are doing those things. And I wanted to get that across. Why does this miracle work in the Bible? Because it was a part of purpose. And why do things align in your life? When you're on purpose, because then you're in your natural flow.
Right.
You don't have to pull it up and stir it up and pray it up and have everybody praying with you about it, because you are in your flow of your calling, of your purpose, of your mission. And when you're not, I'm just a big believer in, I use real basic language. I call it, I know when I'm in tune and I know when I'm not. And I know if I've let being out of tune go too far, because that means, okay, I tell myself, okay, dude, it's time for you to shut down. It's time to stop the calls, the text messages, the emails, the TikTok or whatever, Facebook. Sit down, do your more prayer work, sit down with a good book, sit down and do your meditation, do your contemplation, and get yourself back in what I would consider in tune. Like, for years we had a baby, we still have it, it's just not visible on the stage, a grand piano. But what people didn't know is we had a person that would come in and tune it every week.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because it's such a fancy piano. It's such an expensive piano. It required fine tuning weekly.
Wow.
Now, if a piano needs to be fine tuned weekly, what about us?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that when I first started, I go through my ups and downs in terms of the level of discipline and study. Like I'm like anybody else. And so when I start to contemplate, because I've been turning the page, shifting into new gear, purpose, and really being open to what is the calling on my life today, right? Because sometimes we're in pursuit of a call that has come and gone. Like we've moved on from that particular assignment. And so, I appreciated that there are you got to stop and pay attention. Like life can be so busy. There can be so much going on in the news with your kids, with your job, whatever it is, but it's your responsibility to carve out space to connect, to hear. And I don't know if y'all peep the spiritual practice in there, right? He said to pray, to contemplate, to read a good book, right? Like there's sometimes something in study, spiritual study will absolutely move you into deeper insight. So I just wanted to offer that if you're feeling like that sounds good for Rev, you know what I mean? I want you to know that those practices you can do, that you can take a minute, and it doesn't take forever. It doesn't take having a 2-week vacation in order to start to contemplate. Begin with what you have, right? Begin with what you have, the time you have, or make a small amount of time work. Because this was so this clip right here is where I thought we were going. This clip is about, I think, when we talk about what our 5 responsibilities are as a child of God, right? Which is right thinking, right feeling, right words, right actions, and right reactions. And I often say that we can get all 4 right. And then the reactions knock us all the way off, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reactions, how we respond to things are completely takes us out of our spiritual alignment. I want to play this clip and then we're going to unpack that some more.
All right.
When you must deal with the inevitable challenges and growth opportunities that arise in your business and jobs, which version of you deals with the breakdown? Is it the spiritually aware you that knows God always has an answer? That God is the source of your supply? That God, as peace, love, divine order, and grace are your everyday standards? Or is it the version of you that goes along with the crowd and panics, worries, and fears because you don't feel equipped to meet the moment?
So I was really, really impressed by this one. I think that the which version of me has been a question I've been asking myself. What version of me is dealing with this right now? What version of me is watching the news? Which version of me is looking at the way I'm going to spend my time today?
Yeah. The thing about it is we often don't think about that we wear many hats. And there are different versions of us that show up for different things. I think that we're consistent across the board, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And we might have some dominant ways in which we move. But what I was trying to help people understand is you can be in your everyday life spiritually aware and meet the situations and circumstances, not like a quote unquote spiritual weirdo, because some people think that means you just have to be so detached from everything.
Right.
But from the standpoint of looking at life from a higher spiritual perspective, so when situations happen and they are inevitable, it's too many people making too many choices and actions that come together like a complex matrix of decision making and actions that will require the inevitable breakdown in life. Not to mention things wear and tear. You're going along great. All of a sudden, it's AC and it's 100 degrees in Chicago, and then your AC goes out. Who's the you that's meeting that? You gotta, you're trying to get back and forth to work. You got to make your hustle, get your kids to school, and then the car doesn't start. Who's the you that deals with those breakdowns? You're at your job and things aren't going the way you needed it to be, or the business isn't acting because this series is about jobs, career, and business. Things aren't going the way you want them to go. Who's the you that's dealing with those situations? Because that determines what's available to you.
Yeah,
That's the key.
Yeah.
Different versions of you allow different levels of availability. Okay. The spiritual you has the ability to deal with unlimited possibilities and infinite potentialities. The regular level of human consciousness you might get stuck in your own ego perceptions, your own beliefs, your own limited beliefs about something. And we need to know the difference. And that's why I say you need to know when you're in tune and when you're not. Because if you've ever responded, and you said reacted, I'm going to use the term respond to something, and you emotionally erupted, that was from a space that was not centered in your peace. And it shows. And unfortunately, other people have to get burned by your emotional lava.
And I think that the part that that really kind of stood out for where I am right now is sometimes there's a version of you that you've outgrown, right? That's showing up for the moment. And it's like, wait a minute, I just went through some major life transitions, right? My son has graduated and then literally left the house, moved out to move into his own place. And he's getting internet today. It's a major foundation shift, right?
Yeah.
But as I'm talking to him and as I'm thinking about what I need to do, it's like the old me that was entwined in his life in a certain way was responding where there's a new creation that need to happen. And I'm just talking about me and my son, right? But that idea, like which version of you, is a important thing to just consider. It's an important thing to just be mindful of, that you want to, and the way that you meet, the way that I meet, when I find that, hey, I'm acting on the outside of myself, I'm acting, the old me has been surfaced, this old version of myself has come up. It is to say, okay, well, who am I, right?
Yeah.
Who am I?
You know, one of my cousins often jokes with me, and some of his younger cousins, is that he was in my dad's generation, and he would always say, because his name isn't McDowell, he's like, man, I know it just take one little thing, and you McDowells will recalibrate. And that's his joke to say, I don't care how you all are showing up now. I know how you get down.
Right.
You know, you'll go upside somebody's head. And it's a good joke, but it's a reminder that old versions of you might be inadequate for what is necessary and needed now.
Absolutely.
And if you show up as a version of you that is not equipped to handle the situations that you're in, you can end up in a real serious problem. I think this is what happens often when people are in relationships, marriage, long-term relationships, and they don't adapt to the newer versions of each other.
Yeah.
You know, being a man at 20 is different than being a man at 35. Being a man at 35 is much different than being a man at 50, and so on and so on. And it's the same for ladies. So what version of you is showing up in this experience? Me and my buddies, we used to joke about it. We used to joke when we used to show up back in our quote unquote party days about the old man at the club. Right. We would say, like, this guy with, this pimp outfit on and a hat with the feathers is like, why is this guy in here trying to hit on these 22-year-old ladies? He's like, old man at the club. But part of that is to joke, to say, okay, what season are you in? I'm not saying go act quote unquote old. What I am saying is know your season. Yeah. Which I talked about later in another context.
I want to go to this identity thing, this identity part again, that is like, who are you? Who's meeting the moment right now when you are looking at, and this is something that is happening all the time, but especially at the points when we are meeting something that feels big, right? When something's going on that feels big, that's a perfect opportunity to stop and say, who's meeting this moment? And so this, I think this is an important reminder around identity as well. Let me play the fourth clip.
Do you think that you are more than enough or not enough for the situation? Repeat after me. I have experiences. I am not my experiences. I'm always bigger than my experiences. You might be going through some stuff, but you're not the stuff. You might be in the midst of some mess, but you're not the mess. You might be encountering a breakdown, but you are not the breakdown. You are the divine image and likeness of God, irrespective of the situation. Jesus knew who he was.
So this is the key, right? This is the key right here. You dropped 3. I'm gonna give you my favorite. My favorite one was at the end, which is Jesus knew who he was. And I think that that's an important thing to think about when we look at the miracles, when we look at the healings, that he started knowing who he was. And I like to say, let's be like Jesus. Jesus is the way shower. Like,
what would Jesus do?
What would Jesus do? Know who I am, right? I got to know
who you are. Everything starts from your sense of identity. And his sense of identity allowed options that were not available to other people with the less of a sense of spiritual identity. And that's one of the things I was trying to get across. So when you look at that story, what I was trying to do was present it in a way, because this probably sermon has been taught a million times over the last 2,000 years. I was trying to say, okay, how can I teach this in a way that I haven't heard personally? So I started with some different perspectives, one of which was, do you know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
Because that allows you access to more resources, opportunities, and possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
When you know who you are, there's a divine alignment that seeks to support your state of being. When you don't know who you are, it's the same thing. Things will show up in your experience to support your state of being, your level of consciousness, as we would say in New Thought, your mental equivalent, as Emmett Fox would say. It's important for us to always know who we are spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you know who you are spiritually, certain things you don't allow. I don't want to delve into a whole bunch of other things, but I've had numerous conversations with my daughter because, you know, she's 25 and she's in the pop culture and the, you know, talking about the Diddy trial and all that. And from my perspective, without obviously taking our podcast into that stuff, would be if those young ladies knew who they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you don't allow anybody
No.
to
No.
influence you to devalue yourself. Now we can play the conversation about, you know, criminality and all of that. I'll leave that to the courts.
Yeah.
I'm talking strictly as a metaphysician right now. For those who are out there who might have gone through abuse and things of that nature, I'm not devaluing anybody's pain or experience. What I am saying is that consciousness still determines experience.
Yeah. 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 It's not easy to chew on that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that there is anytime make it personal. Anytime I found myself in a precarious position, there was a desperate thought behind it. There was a feeling of lack in some way behind it. And me doing that thing, me putting myself in that position was in response to my lack mentality, right? I can look at myself and say that as a true student, as someone who's aware of themselves. And so I understand that perspective. Now, that doesn't say I deserved any of, you know, the quote unquote deserve, or no, I deserve the best, right? But I made some choices based on how I saw myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that first thing about Jesus knowing who he is very important. I was watching so the story, I don't know if we've really just kind of identified the story, but the story that is the heart of this lesson is Jesus feeding the 5,000, right? And it's recorded in all 4 of the Gospels. And I laugh at this story because there's a part of it that's like, oh, this happens all the time. Anybody who's ever had to cook a meal, had to make that meal stretch, right, knows about multiplying the fishes and the loaves. And I was watching a TV show, and it's set in the 50s, and it's like a white American family. And so the husband brings home a coworker, and she had made 2 steaks. And so she had to make it work, right? And so what she did is basically gave the coworker, gave his boss the other steak, and she was just sitting there eating on a salad.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about when you know who you are, right? You problem solve from that perspective. And I when I saw this, I laughed, talking, please, I would have chopped that steak up. We would have all had steak. Now let's trust and believe. We would have all had steak. It just might have looked a little different. And but that part about how you look at your life, do you know who you are, and that you are not your experiences? And if you're not your experiences, and you keep digging and find that you're something greater, then how do you look at that challenge that you had? Shamika says consciousness determines experience. I like it. So Gavin gave a couple of points in the book, and you spotlighted them in the sermon about what was inspired out of the lesson of not even the lesson, the miracle of Jesus expanding 5 fishes and loaves to feed 5,000 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just spreading a dinner for 2 and to 3, but literally like the multitudes were supplied. And there were 3 steps. It was to sit down, what do you have, and to give thanks.
Right. Yeah.
Sit down, what do you have, and to give thanks. And each of them can preach on their own. Each of those 3 steps are a lot, because calming your mind is depending on how practiced you are, that can be the biggest feat, which is just to calm yourself down. We get anxious, we get emotional, and we get fearful when something appears out of order, or some instance comes up. You talked about all the things that work together for stuff that happen in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
All the decisions that people are making that come together and may come up as a challenge for you.
Right.
Sit down and breathe. And you gave some steps. I don't think I caught all your steps, but you said breathe.
I don't have them in front of me right now.
I know, but
okay.
You'll hear it. This is most of it, I think. To breathe, to deny that the situation has power over you. Affirm the truth about the situation. Those are the 3 that I caught from just what you do when you're calming.
You just do those 3 by itself, it'll change a lot. Breathe is because you got to get your physical body, because your body carries that tension. So just like we talk about the mind can affect the body can affect the mind. You start to breathe and you relax the body, you untie those nerves, and then it allows you to get some clarity, because if your body's going crazy, your mind has to focus on what's happening in your body, because your mind's job is to protect it. So you have to tell yourself, you have to talk to yourself, hey, calm down. Hey, peace, be still.
Yeah.
Hey, release. I let go, I let God. Breathe. I let go, I let God. Breathe. I let go, I let God. Breathe. How many times you got to do it? I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. As far as what do I have? Now you start looking at your talents, gifts, and abilities. What do you have? What do you have available to you? Resources, relationships. There's so many other variables that go along with that. And then to give thanks is the consciousness of understanding that before it ever shows up, you give thanks for it.
Right.
All right. You're establishing the consciousness for the thing, because if you can give thanks, legitimately give thanks for what is not present, you can have it in your hand, but you can't have anything in your hand that you can't get in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. This idea of focusing on what you have. Like, I think that's the part that is the most miraculous part of the entire miracle to me, right? It is that in the midst of a very heightened experience, it was going to be violent if these people didn't eat. It was going to be chaos and confusion if these people didn't eat. And in the midst of that, instead of to think about how all of the potential outcomes, it is to focus on what you have. What do we have?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What do we have? What do you have? And one of the things that I have found, this is again why spiritual community is so important, is that the people who are around you will be sometimes the people that you go to when you're in your most dire experiences. And their consciousness is going to impact the way that you might move out of an emergent situation. So this spiritual community is a place to plug in, where there's someone who will say that God is the source of my supply, that everything is working together for your good, that there has to be a solution because God is the source, right? Like just somebody to give you a different something to think on is an advantage of this community. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think one of the other things that people don't take into account, and I agree with you 100% about what you said about being in a faith community, is that church and spiritual communities in general are one of the very few places where $1 million CEO could be sitting next to a minimum wage parent of 3, like literally sitting next to them, serving in ministries, in class with each other. You have access to a larger field of talent, a larger pool of talent, relationships, and what's the word I want to use? Information.
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, like many people, I know people who have made decisions that ended up with them being imprisoned. What I'm aware of is that they went to their circle. So a situation happened. I'm tough on my money ain't looking right and whatever. And if you got drug dealers all around you, what do you think you're gonna look at? Well,
Yeah.
and what is their solution? If you got people that rob people, if you got people that break into businesses or carjack people, guess what? But if you have people that figure out how to how to create relationships to be able to get jobs and start businesses, people who can mentor you in church, often for free. It's just part of a relationship where you help them and they help you. There are ways, as I can remember, Reverend Wells telling a story about being a young man coming here and being around a particular person that was a high level business person. And it was something that he saw really that really impacted his consciousness. Just going to the person's house while he was hanging out with their son. It was an interesting perspective. We have to take a look at who's around us.
Yep.
And as Dennis Kimbrough used to joke, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, if you hang around 9 broke people, you're bound to be the 10th. We have to at least be mindful of what's around us. And I'm not saying that we judge only the people that are around us only based upon what they have in their wallet. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is you have to make sure that people who are around you are not an energetic pull to bring you down.
But you posed the question earlier in the sermon, which is, why am I here with these people?
Why am I here with these people?
That's a question to ask. Why am I here with these people? Because to me, that points to purpose. Like, I take purpose sometimes a little bit too far, but people may say, but I think that we're purpose at each and every given moment. Before I walk into the room, it's like, what am I purpose for? What's my purpose to be in this room? Sometimes we walk into a room and we don't hit our purpose. It's when you see somebody come and they bring a weird energy into the room, like they didn't come in and say, what am I purposed for?
Yes.
A lot of people who are really great personalities, big personalities, like to be the center of attention, will walk into a room where they really need to be a comfort or an ear, and they miss the moment, they miss the opportunity to fulfill that purpose. So I think that why am I in this place with these people is not necessarily a negative thing, but it's just to say, like, what am I here for?
What am I here to do? What am I here to do? Why am I here? When I'm hanging out with my buddies, I told this, not this Sunday, but next Sunday is my beloved Kung Fu teacher's birthday. So I called him. He doesn't care about birthdays. He's like one of them old school CUT people. I don't do age. I don't do birthdays. You know how Johnny was. And I was like, look, you might not care about your birthday, but we do. And we want to celebrate you. So what I need from you is to allow us to celebrate you on that day, even if that day is not necessarily something that you highlight in your life. It's not a priority for you, but you are a priority for us. It changes the consciousness of a thing.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. I'm a busy person. Why am I taking effort to try to plan something to be with you on your birthday? Because it matters to me, and he matters to me, and he matters to the other people that I'm inviting. It's that point. We got to be present to why we're doing a thing. And just because, and sometimes it takes time to communicate the reason why we're doing a thing, because sometimes until a person and when it dawned on him, he was like, man, I thank you. Because he didn't think about it from that standpoint. Just because it's not a big deal to you, that means it's not a big deal.
Yep. And there's a version of him that not celebrating a birthday worked for, right? There's a version, but sometimes we could do it. Well, we need the people around us. We need to be on the receiving side of the love. Joe in the chat said, I remember when Johnny Coleman saying repetition was important, but once you get it, you get it. I'm grateful I was able to learn at such a young age the power of thought, conscious, and prayer, and the prayer protection. Thank you for sharing that. I think this is why we do what we're doing here today, which is part of that repetition. That, y'all could go back and just listen to the sermon. It was pretty chock full of good stuff, right? But what we want to do is to tease out, like, really what's in it for me. And then here's the thing, that as a minister, and this is the question, I actually have this question written down at every rewind, and I do not ask it every time. It's like, what did you want to say that you either forgot to say, ran out of time to say, or that occurred to you as, oh, I wish I had said that. Because I think those are them golden nuggets.
That's a great point. I don't want to stir the pot because I have something I definitely want to say during the peace part, but I don't know if I want to do that. I'll say it. You really want me to say it?
I do. I do.
Not a
Now
part
you
of
have
the
to say it
sermon.
now.
Yeah.
You have to say it now.
So basically, my position was that when people are doing violent things, where innocent people are being hurt via military action, I use the example of if a person, for instance, Chicago Police Department was chasing a criminal, and a criminal decided to run behind some children or elderly or whatever, as a hostage, so the police can't get to them. The police doesn't get to shoot the person to get the criminal or to stop the criminal. But that's what either what we do or we allow ourselves to do, and we align ourselves with when we see situations where the terrorists are hiding in the hospitals and they're hiding in schools. That don't mean you get to blow up the school with the kids and the hospitals with patients and doctors and nurses and staff. So you just like the Chicago police or any police department has to figure out a different way to address that situation. Yes, get the criminal. Yes, get the terrorist. I get it. That doesn't give you carte blanche to hurt innocent people. And I just feel as though that the fact that as Christians and as truth students, and let me just go a level deeper, as human beings, we've become so desensitized to people being harmed who have nothing to do with this nonsense that people are fighting about.
Yeah.
So then people have that they try to wipe it out. The Facebook and the Instagrams don't want to show it. They try to block your page and ban, because people are showing the real violence that's happening to innocent people. Okay, you want to have, I'm a big believer in you can have order, but figure out how to do it in love, if at all possible.
Yeah.
You protect your borders. Why are you taking babies out of mothers' arms and then often not seeing them again? Like, see, Mind the Ground was about business. See, you asked the question, and that was a question, because this is a part of my love thing at the beginning.
Yeah.
Where does love dictate that type of action? Because I'm a big believer that wisdom and love are like going to Popeye's Chicken or KFC. You get the chicken, you always get a biscuit. You should not engage in wisdom without love and love without wisdom. Why? Wisdom without love can sometimes be cold. And love without wisdom can sometimes put you in situations that can compromise you.
Yeah.
Because love is blind, literally. So they're a package deal. And when they get out of balance, that's when we see the disturbances that we see around the world, whether it's individually in ourselves, with our families, in our communities, in our homes, in our jobs, in our businesses, in our governance, whether that's city or state or the country or the world. Because the balance between trying to figure out wisdom and divine order and structure and love are out of balance. And I'm just going to be a stand for not being a hypocrite about it.
Yeah.
When I see people who are being harmed by the decisions that other people are making, and folks who proclaim to follow Jesus just go along with it, as long as they get to drive their Lexus, that bothers me.
Yeah, it is very bothersome, and I thank you for sharing that. Listen, look, Shamika said we want to know. You can't put one out there like that. But that is, listen, trust me, that question is gonna come more consistently, because that is literally on my page every time. I think that I think it's a powerful tie together, that the idea, I think they call it collateral damage, right? Where there's some unintended, someone's hurt, and they do that in business as well, right? They do that. It's happening. It is very much inhumane that but here's what it reflects. It reflects the devaluing of individual souls, right? Like if you really cherish the life of each and every person that is on the planet because you recognize that we are all one, then the way that you address concerns, the way that you address challenges will reflect that idea of oneness. So it's always a love thing. That's why I love love so much. It's always
Emmett
a love
Fox, I can't remember exactly where Emmett Fox wrote it, but he wrote basically when you're doing business with someone, and I would say this also addresses conflict. As a true student, you have to understand that God is on both sides of the table. Now that's
Absolutely.
difficult when you see somebody as as an opposition or the whatever, but that person that you don't like, even if they're wonderfully denouncing through their actions and behavior that they're a child of God, is still a child of God. So okay. So what do I need to know about God in this situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, okay, now that's one thing. Now, what do I need to know about me in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Then I can get to what do I know about you in this situation?
Yeah.
And if we can put all of those three things back to truth, we can get rid of most of this silliness that's happening in the world.
Yeah. Yep.
Now you got me
I
talking
say that,
about
and if you had
real stuff instead of the
no, I say listen, because I think that there's just this one truth. We all are dealing with that. We take this one truth and we apply it, right? So I think that the application of it works across the board. And as we're looking at, I know that as I'm looking at companies that are getting ready to start layoffs and all that, and you think about the why of it, right? Why are we shifting people around or displacing people in their jobs? And it is, some of that is just the collateral damage. It's like we're trying to get to a certain level of profit and we're willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of that, versus looking at it to say, you know what, we're doing pretty well as a company, right? Like this wasn't the most profitable year, but what we're going to do is invest more in what our people, invest more in like, what can we do to preserve and grow from where we are? That's not what they troubleshoot from, because it's business. But if you're playing a love game, if everything you do is from a space of love, it just may inform you differently when decisions like that are on the table. So I know I try to move in my business from a space of love at all given times. And I love that chicken and the biscuit, right? Like that you said KFC, I'm gonna say Popeyes.
I said KFC or Popeye. When I originally taught this at a POT in Cancun back in 2000, it was a while ago, 2008, it was Popeye, it was KFC. Every time, but it's true. Every time you get chicken, they give you a biscuit. And you have to look at life like that. And it's a funny analogy to remind people that it's always supposed to go together. I did want to mention one thing because I know we're about ready to wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, one of the things that I brought up were two things. One was know what season you're in, sowing season or harvest season. I think that's important because there are people who are trying to live their best life when they're in sowing season to create the life.
So let me stop you there because I didn't pull that clip, but I did have that question as a point to discuss. Like tell me just really quickly, what's the difference between sowing and reaping season?
Sowing season is what you're seeking to create. So for instance, sowing season might be the time and the grind that's necessary to get your business where you need it to be. It might be the preparation, the education, the training you need to have. It might be the initial you at the job now. This is not the time to be, not maximizing the amount of time and talent you have to produce the results you want.
Right.
It might be the situation, whatever. There's a season to go really hard on pushing to produce the results you want. And then there's times when you're still working, but you're benefiting from previous work. People want benefits that they have not sown. Mm-hmm. And we see this now more and more with the social media situation and circumstances where, because of Instagram and all the TikToks and Facebooks and all of this type of stuff, well, people want lives and they're willing to go into debt. They're willing to compromise their integrity. They're willing to make real, potentially criminal decisions. They're willing to break up relationships and families just because they're in their quote unquote best life, they think, season. Now, of course, new thought, we're all about living your best life, but live it in divine order. Like, when you don't need to be out in the street spending the money at the party. That's why I said, when you're sowing, you need to be planning, not partying. When you're sowing, you need to be getting your money right versus out there spending it recklessly with no thought. When you're sowing with your family, this is the time you put it in with your children or your significant other or whatever. When you're sowing, this is when you're doing your own self-development work to make sure you're good to be able to tackle the things that are out there. But what ends up happening is people want to benefit, but they don't want to do the work ahead of time. And that, which led to me saying, which I've never heard anybody teach before, that those people that were waiting on Jesus to make the demonstration are indicative of folks always wanting someone else to be responsible for their results. So yes, miracles are great, but it would also have been great to say we're going into this wilderness and we need to make sure we got some food with us. As Obama
created the emergency.
Right. So as Obama said to the person when he was running for president in 2008, when he was trying to push his idea for the Affordable Care Act, he said what's your health plan? He said, my health plan is prayer. He said, that's great, but that's not a plan. So what we end up doing is we create emergencies, and then we expect somebody else of higher consciousness and resources to be the solution for what we created. And all I'm saying is, nobody normally talks about that part of the story. It's, oh my God, Jesus did this, and oh my God, Jesus did that. I live my life as much as I possibly can in a way to not put myself in what I would call unnecessary jeopardy. Will life happen? Yes. Will unexpected stuff happen? Yes. Has unexpected stuff happened to me that I did not see coming? Absolutely yes. But what can you avoid that you can by just setting up some stuff to where you're not always in emergency mode, waiting for somebody to rescue you? When Reverend Wells often says, be active in your own rescue.
Yeah.
So that's all I got to say about that. But I do want us to be present to, folks that, asking for help, but they're not asking from a prayerful standpoint of what do I need to do? Okay. Because you might be praying, oh my God, Pastor, lay hands on me to heal or pray for me. Great. But you might be hearing in your mind, the Spirit tell you, get up and walk around the block every morning. You don't want to hear that. You want me or Reverend Sheree to lay hands on you.
Sowing and reaping is a powerful part of this story, and I think that definitely that's one of the fun things about metaphysical study is that you can begin to look at the different people and kind of what they represent and then how it works together. I love when I put my head to the side and see something a little differently. So this sowing and reaping, as we wrap out, I want to just do a call to action and also a shameless plug, right? That it is important that you recognize which season that you're in. Sometimes the reason that you don't have any giddy up is that you're trying to reap and you haven't sown. Sometimes the reason that you're like, where are my results, is that you've sown, but you're not going to reap. Like it's important, I think, to look at and say, ask that question, which season am I in? Right. And just be real honest with yourself with that, because it's really easy. We're in a collective consciousness where everything, I call it the microwave, because that's when it started for me, which is that you don't even have to let something cook long. Like you can just put it in the microwave and you get it right away. And so we started putting everything in the microwave. We started putting all of the things that take a cycle, right? That there is a process, and we negate the process and hope that things will start to work out and be faster and all that. So I can go on and on about sowing and reaping. But in terms of planting seeds, one of the things that I'm doing this coming Saturday, we did my first cohort of the vision board course, Locked and Loaded. We're doing a mid-year check-in on Saturday. So that's just for those who went through the course. I taught vision boarding at my sorority convention this past weekend, and of course, like this is not what I expected. Like, it's not a cut and paste craft project when I work on vision boards with you, but I am going to do another live cohort of it. And so just keep tapped into the Rewind. I will share the link for the wait list for that. I think you can probably find it at ShereeSpeaks.com. But all that to say is that planting seeds is important. And so if you're looking at your year, like, what did I plant? You may not have sown. You may have just skipped that part. And so we want to get back to divine order.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, I said three shameless plugs. The other one is that Manifest is starting back up at Christ Universal Temple. And so we are going to have another 4-week experience working the power of affirmations. I want to emphasize, because I didn't emphasize this on the launch, the in-person is fellowship. It is after service, 4 Sundays starting July 13th. And it was so fun. Everybody, all the feedback we got was that it was really, really impactful for them. It's great to kind of go back to basics. And for some, it's new, like new people can roll right into Manifest. But there's also an online Manifest group. And so I want to make sure that you don't have to, if you're not in the Chicago area, if you are in the Chicago area, though, go to the temple.
Absolutely.
Go to the temple and fellowship with the people, right? This is your chance to go and fellowship and have a great time growing spiritually with the people. If you are unable to go because you are not in the Chicago area, come and play with me, right? We're going to do a couple of versions of it online, and we had a good time with those who joined. So I wanted to just share that there's some other opportunities for you to hit the reset button as we move into the second half of the year and really move forward with greater intention.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for such a potent word. I want to thank those who have been joining us and chatting along with us. Valerie, thank you so much. Regina, Miko, you still there? Thank you so much. Yes, you were. She was one of the online members. You got a t-shirt coming too as well. We didn't mail the t-shirts to our group online, so you'll get your t-shirt. Velma, CK, thank you so much. Unfolding with Peggy, Shamika, Dot, thank you so much as usual. Joe, if you're still around, thank you so much. Thank you for coming in live. Thank you for sharing and letting people know that that this is happening and that there's the opportunity to grow here. We'll be back next week. This will be the last in the Mind and Grind series. And in the hot seat will be the author, Gavin Jackson, who will come and share a powerful, we're going to unpack his word. So I want to thank you again. I want to bless you right where you are. Rev, I know you've had a very busy day. Thank you for taking time to come and play here on the Rewind. I appreciate it. Bless you on the rest of your day. I know this wasn't the end of the day. So
I got other things to go do as soon as I literally log off. But it's always a blessing to give people an opportunity to hear this new thought, Christian, practical Christianity message. You know, this is why we're here.
Thank you. Yana, I see you on there too. So thank you so much for coming on in. So God bless you all real good. Have a beautiful, love-filled and joy-filled day. We'll be back next week with the Rewind.
God bless.
God bless you.